First, let me fix a single line of code. Let's go to the singleton script. And we don't actually need this, so just get rid of it. / means the script is not going to read it. It's just notes. I'm getting rid of this because the first time you run this code, instance is always going to be null, so you don't actually have to look for it. And you don't want something like find every time you try to get an instance. That's just going to bring down your performance. It would be best if I have some code that looks for instances where there's more than one and gets rid of it. But this is a relatively simple game, so I think it's all right. Just remember not to put any singletons into any game object. So now let's go back to Unity. I would like to change some shaders. If I look at this, instead of using the standard specular setup, I'm just going to use the standard shader. So I'm going to keep the old one, and I'm going to make a duplicate by pressing Ctrl D, and I'm going to rename this standard shader. So now we have a new material. I'm going to get rid of everything except for the default texture here. I'm going to get rid of the normal map, occlusion. We also don't want any emission. And I'm going to change this into the standard shader. Now that we have a new material, I'm going to drag this into the player. His head, his body, his hand, pants, and shoes. If we look at the hierarchy, we can now see that the shader has been changed. Hands, head, pants, shoes, and torso. I think this is too shiny, so I'm going to bring down the smoothness. And I'm also going to bring up the metallic value up a little bit. The closer you get to 1, it's more like metal. The closer you get to 0 is a much more coarse material, something like wood. So just find the values that you like here. I think I like this a little better. It's a little more cartoony, I would say. If you don't like the standard shader or whatever shade that it's in the player right now, we can go to the Unity Asset Store and look for a different shader. I'm going to try this Minimalist Shader. Once it's downloaded, I'm going to make another duplicate of the material here and call it something else, Minimalist. And I'm going to change it here. I'm going to look for it. Here we go. And I'm going to do the same thing, drag it in to the every render that has the shader. Okay, let me check. You can look at the hierarchy and see that all the shaders have been changed. So you can go through the Unity Asset Store and look for something that you like. I just like the standard shader. One thing I would like to add here is instead of trying to drag the shader into every renderer, it would be nice to have a button, maybe here, that you can press that changes all the materials below. So let's make that script. In order to make that kind of a custom button, we're going to need a folder called editor. Go into that folder. That folder has to be called editor. And we're going to create a new C# script called material changer. Go in there, and we're going to start using the Unity editor functions. Let's create the namespace as usual. And we're going to start using some custom editor functions for the character control. And this script is going to inherit the functions from the editor. We're going to use a function called onInspector. This allows us to change the GUI. We're going to draw the default UI as usual. But on top of that, we're going to look at the character control. And we're going to create a button there. We'll call the button change material. Oops. I think it's called GUI layout. Okay. We're going to create a button, and if the button is pressed, we're going to access the character control, and we're going to call something called change material. Let's go to character control and create a function called change material. Save both of the scripts. And if we go back to Unity, look at the character control, we might have to add it again. Remove it, then add it. There we go. Now we have this button. Whenever we press this button, this function is going to be called. Let's add the animator again because it's gone. Now we have to put in the code that's going to change the materials. Let's have a variable called material. And we're going to look for renderers in every single child from this game object. We're going to do that by using the function called getComponents in children. And we're going to look for renderers. And for each renderer found in the hierarchy, we're going to change the material. We don't want to change the material for the character control. So if the game object is not the same as this game object, that's when we change the material. And we also don't want the material to be empty. We always want to specify the material first. So if the material is null, then we'll get the error message. No material specified. Now let's go back to Unity. And if we look at the character control, we see that there's a material box here. Now we have to drag the new material into this box. So let's look for a material. And let's say we're going to switch back to the original material that this character came with. Drag it in there. And click on change material. Now all the materials have been changed. We can do the same thing again. Use a standard shader, change material, or the minimalist shader. So just pick one. Now we don't have to change all the shaders by dragging into every renderer. Apply and save. Now, if you don't know what a shader is, I would highly recommend that you look for a video or Google it and learn what a shader is. It's basically how every pixel gets rendered by your GPU. And just by changing shaders, you can completely change how your game looks. Another material I would like to change is a skybox, this ugly blue-gray thing here. Let's go to Window, Rendering, Lighting Settings, and let's drag it here. So we now have the default skybox, but we'd like to change that. Let's go back to the Unity Asset Store. Maybe search for a sky. I'm going to try this thing called Free Skybox. Once it's downloaded, let's go to the skybox material. Click here. And we're going to pick one. And you might also want to change the intensity. Pick a value that you like. And we're done. Earlier in the video, I realized that the speed here was set to 0, so it wasn't moving. So increase the speed number if your character is not moving. And now we have a new skybox and a character with a different shader. So play around with this. Look through the asset store. Try to find something that you like. And that's it for today. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.